there is a lot of technology that is getting implemented in the world which is not yielding sufficient ROI. And obviously there is a gap between the business needs and what the technology tries to solve.
How quickly could we implement that in such a way that it starts to deliver some benefit, either in terms of service benefit that may have some cost benefits down the line, or something that will give immediate efficiencies to drive costs down, I suppose.
So it's kind of a bridge between the technology and the business.
Absolutely. There is no point implementing any technology if it doesn't help the business or the clients or the customers.
So while you are building or modifying or customizing the system to fit the needs of the business, you need to engage with the actual user at that point in time. Hi, this is Abhishek Rungta, and this is episode 6 of I Love Technology podcast. And today I have a very special friend and a guest, Roger from Market Systems, with whom I have privilege of working for several years now. And we have been, working on multiple projects. And I would love to pick his brains today to understand how technology and business creates value for an entity. So welcome, Roger.
Hello.
Thank you for taking out time.
No problem at all.
Yeah. So, Roger, why don't you tell a little bit about the current role you play at Market Systems?
Okay, so my role has evolved a little bit. My current role is Head of Business Operations for Market Systems. We provide an insurance platform for quite a specific type of insurer in the Lloyd's insurance market. So our platform has had to adapt over time, and the services and offering that we provide has also had to adapt over time. So my role is to try and facilitate, foresee what's coming down the tracks and make sure that we can provide those services and bake those into the platform for our clients.
So what I understand is that your role needs you to not only spend time with the clients, but also with the tech teams.
Absolutely, yes. So the role is predominantly looking down to make sure the operation is running effectively, but for that to work, there has to be quite a bit of looking forward to see what's coming down the tracks and trying to lace that into our operations and the thinking behind how we're going to deliver things.
So it's kind of a bridge between the technology and the business.
Absolutely. There is no point implementing any technology if it doesn't help the business or the clients or the customers.
So walk me through, like today, of course, there is a lot of technology that is getting implemented in the world, which is not yielding sufficient ROI. And obviously there is a gap between the business needs and what the technology tries to solve. How do you keep yourself grounded and find the right problems to solve in the business, and then of course apply the technology to it?
Okay, so my original background was in project management. So larger scale project management tends to start with a business case. So what we're seeing with things like AI is there is no business case. There's a perceived need to try and use AI on something, but the perceived value of that isn't there yet. So where we see the different areas of where we could implement AI, I'm sort of thinking about what would be the return on investment with that? How quickly could we implement that in such a way that it starts to deliver some benefit, either in terms of service benefit that may have some cost benefits down the line, or something that will give immediate efficiencies to drive costs down, I suppose. So it's sort of that project manager hat on, helps you pick the best options, or we'll leave that on for a little bit longer until someone else has solved the difficult problems, and then we can bring that into the streams.
So what I understand is that you look at the possible functionalities or the possible problem statements, and then try to see if this problem statement is worth solving or not in the business. Will it create a commercial value for the company or not?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just again, using AI as a good example.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of our clients have come to me saying, we need to show we're using AI. Okay, well, what problem are you trying to solve? Yeah. We don't know. How are you using it? And we'll pick one. It's sort of, okay, it's the tail wagging the dog, if you're familiar with that phrase. Yeah. So yeah, we've got a number of sort of different streams going at the moment, depending on what the client is doing. Yeah. You can sort of select an approach for them to start looking at that. It gives them an ability to go back to their paymasters and justify what they're going to have to spend to implement that. So in our industry, in insurance, the drive at the moment is to try and get the gamut of different documentation that brokers send in, and understand that in the context of what is it they're asking for, who is this person, what are they allowed to do with us in terms of contracts, and how do I import that gamut of information that could be in any format into our system such that we can generate underwriting ratings and come back to them with a reasonable price or a quote or an offer. And I'd say over the last 2 years, that's really been the focus of a lot of the sales side, because so much time is spent cutting and pasting from documents into various systems in order to document it, because obviously it's a regulated industry. So for one client to issue a quote, they have to have documented that. So that interpretation, that document ingestion, taking the data from different sources and getting that in front of the underwriter is a big driver for a lot of our clients at the moment.
Sure. So LLMs are actually good in doing that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So are you using a lot of LLMs to kind of solve that problem for users?
We've got there are a number of third-party providers that's their reason for being. They've been doing it since the outset. They've got progressively good at extracting the data. I think where we're seeing the friction really is understanding the data they've imported. Does it match up to what we've got to put into the system? So dates are a very good example.
Right.
It will find every date on the page, but it doesn't know whether that's a risk date or an insured date or date of issue. Or so getting the dates, date types, or things that it recognises but doesn't necessarily understand the context of that data. Quite often it gets that mapped wrongly.
So one thing what I'm taking from this initial conversation is that understanding the business case which actually makes sense to invest in, and that business case should be big enough for you to actually spend time and invest money into it.
Yes.
And not just run after every feature or every technology.
Yeah.
So for example, in insurance, managing these different documents, taking out data from these different documents, creating new documents, ensuring that all of these things are aligned is a much more time consuming and effort consuming work, which you are now saying that, okay, this is the number one problem I want to solve. And that is where you are putting effort when it comes to using AI.
Yeah. So as far as the clients are concerned, that's a saleable solution that we can use them for. Internally, we have a gamut of information. Data within our systems is vast. And connecting that up and pulling the diamonds out of the pile is where internally we're starting to use it a lot more.
Right.
Last 3 years or so, we get a client come to us and say, we've done, 2 million quotes over the last 2 years. Yeah. Can you show us where we've diverged from our underwriting guide or rating model? Right. That's a lot of data to pick through if you're trying to do that manually. But, AI is really good at finding patterns in things. Right. So lots of data, find me the patterns, and it comes up with things that you can then drill into a little bit further. So internally, we're using it to better understand our systems and the data. Externally, it's packaging that up into something that we can sell to the customer as a benefit, and they're willing to pay for that service, but equally willing to pay for the provider that it is like the best in their market for doing that service.
Right.
We understand we can't do everything. You mentioned customer expectations in a previous conversation. Expectations from customers of to what the platform is supposed to do or expected to do now are so different to what they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago, if you could enter some detail, generate premiums and reasonable looking documentation, that was enough.
Yeah.
Now we have to integrate with, 20, 30 different data providers.
Yeah.
The variety of documentation has to differ on the context. Communication means it's not just good enough to have email anymore. It's chat.
Yeah, I know.
So those expectations have grown, and trying to absorb that in such a way that you can provide them without having, little industries within your own business to facilitate them has been tricky.
So the technology needs are also increasing even on the existing systems, because now you have influx of information from different sources and also influx of outputs that you need in different forms.
Absolutely. And again, output of data is a massive drive for our clients. Just about everything they do, they need some MI, they need dashboards on it because they have to have feedback to their own boards. It's an interesting market at the moment. AI has sort of driven a truck through it, offering to solve a lot of problems. And I think over the next 6 months to 12 months, some of those problems will present themselves as things that are better, and others will probably fall away.
Yeah.
I think in our industry, I mentioned regulation, the compliance teams, particularly the bigger organizations, are starting to get a bit defensive about how far you can use AI without some constraints. And with the constraints comes the additional costs. And then that comes back to the cost benefit we talked about earlier.
So especially for an industry which is highly regulated, I think the use of AI would be very different, because here you have less areas to experiment. You have to first prove that this So you have to prove two things. One is that this has got sufficient benefit for the business. And second is that it's not going to break something that it's not supposed to break.
Yeah.
And then only you can actually implement that particular functionality.
Yeah, I think so. I think compliance teams and information security teams tend to intertwine with new technologies. So the compliance team will point at the InfoSec team to give them the nod on which way to go with the regulation. AI has sort of, it's like the horse that's already bolted. Yeah. Both sides are looking at this thinking, what should we do to control it? And naturally instinct when any department needs to control something is to try and lock it down.
Of course.
With AI, it's going to inhibit what you can actually do with it. So I think the market is trying to establish what do we do with this new beast that clearly is not going to go away.
Yeah. So let me ask you a hypothetical question, a fun question. So if a human beings make a mistake, I think as leaders and managers, we have already built in some resilience to accept it. We say, okay, if a person has made a 0.1% mistake, it's okay. Humans can make mistakes, right? When AI make mistakes, what is the level of resilience people have, or are they looking at it at a very different way in your conversations with different leaders and different clients and different people? That's what I'm trying to understand from you is how are they looking at that error? Because if human can make 0.1% error, obviously we should also be able to allow AI to make 0.1% error.
It's a very good question. Not one I've thought about, to be honest. I think people do tend to view, if humans do make mistakes, you and I have lived a number of years. We've had to make decisions that have turned out to be possibly not the right decision based on the information based on the information we were presented at the time. True. It felt like the right decision. I think with AI, there's a lot of skepticism around it. So anything that's not 100% is probably used as ammunition to say, well, it's not there yet. But it's a good analogy because you probably wouldn't make that same assertion of a person that they have to be 100% correct all of the time.
Yeah. Excellent. So coming to now the product side, which you are again deeply involved in, how do you balance between the possibilities of a product that a product can actually achieve and customers, the demands, his expectation? Because obviously, as you are rightly saying, not only AI, but in general also, customers have lots of demands, lots of expectations and ideas, right? How do you balance between that and what actually can be done and what is really required to be done? So there are three different things. I want it, it can be done, and it should be done. How do you kind of differentiate between these? Because people would always like to go for I want to do it, which is the highest order, which means that 1,000 items and the can may have 800 items, but you must do maybe only have 20 items.
Yeah.
So how do you manage this expectation on your day-to-day basis?
Well, the correct word is balance. I think humans are quite fickle. If they can see something that is pleasing, then that is good. If things are just right in the background, intuitively that feels less exciting, but that's equally important. So we do have to balance that. 50 things we have to do. The important things for making sure that we don't get a lot of feedback demand, support demand from things being wrong down here that are less exciting, that's important. But equally, we have to pick things from the top that do show visible progress, visible, excitement for what we're doing and moving things in the right direction in terms of features. So it is a balancing act. It's balancing boring with exciting, and hopefully you come up with the right mix that sort of suits everybody.
How do you get people excited about the boring stuff? Internally as well as externally. I know you work with lots of developers. Many of them works with INT.
Yeah.
And motivating them to do the boring stuff is, I'm sure, a little challenging, as well as convincing clients to get the boring stuff done.
I think a lot of our clients, they do the boring stuff themselves as well. So if you can visibly show them that the system is doing the boring stuff for them, they start to get a little bit more confidence that the system is now good. And a good example we have of that, there's a common reporting format called a bordereau in insurance. Every insurance company that's trading has to produce these for the larger insurance companies to show that they've traded in the right way, they've written the right risks. And with any company like that, there are teams of people that take these bordereaux and manually check the columns to make sure that these columns add up to that column. And it's a tedious, boring task. So within the systems that our clients use, there is an integrity checking suite in there where they can set the same sort of checks they would manually do against the bordereau tables. And if any of them just go out of kilter overnight, they get a notification to say, this is going to go wrong at the end of the month unless you don't get the underwriter to go and check it. So it's sort of making the boring jobs easier by showing them you would have had to deal with this next month, and then it would have been urgent. You know about it now, like 3 weeks before, it's going to become a problem. So, finding things that make people's lives easier, and not ignoring the boring teams as well. It's very easy to sort of focus on like the account manager who has different priorities to the accounts team, who you deal with in a different way. They give you the noise in terms of support. So making their lives easier is the boring bit. It's less exciting, but they'll thank you in a different way for it.
I know. So yesterday I was having a very interesting conversation with this gentleman called Julian, who also works with us. And he used a very interesting word. He said that we focus on making our clients passionate about using our product. Because the whole idea is that whenever you build the product, right, the sponsor of the product is a different person. The user of the product is a different person, right? The user of the product looks for what's in it for him. The sponsor of the product wants magic. He has paid you some money. He wants everything automated tomorrow, right? Now let's forget him for the time being. Let's get to the user of the product. How do we make sure that the user of the product finds it equally exciting to use the product? And I'm sure you might have faced those situations where you have bought and built a beautiful system, but the users are not motivated enough to use it. How do you solve that problem?
It's an interesting challenge, and I think it's a generational challenge that we're seeing now. A lot of the Lloyd's insurance market, they tend to be of an older demographic who view technology with a bit of suspicion. They use it sparingly. They'd rather have some of their team members do the day-to-day stuff. We're starting to get a generation of people coming in now that they're not happy with just tabular formats. They want something to be a bit more intuitive, easy to use, less clicks. So that blend is forcing us to change the way that we present different aspects of the system. So, what may have been a fairly procedural system, now we're starting to implement individual overlays. So the user can almost carve their own path through the system based on what they think they need to do next. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an area where you can get your end user more excited about their journey because they're creating the path they want to take, rather than being forced down a path that they don't think is intuitive.
Okay. So as a software provider, do you also end up engaging with those people when you are deploying a project? Because any project that you are deploying is a change management exercise. Mm-hmm. And if we are not engaging with the people whose life is going to change, who's the actual user, he may become a rebel, or he may say, Absolutely. I don't want to use this. So do you guys end up talking to them also when you are getting into a company?
We have a fairly standard formula when we start implementing new clients and onboarding them. And there are a set of about 8 to 10 risks, and almost top of that one is access to subject matter experts may be limited.
Right.
And because if you don't get access to the people that are going to use the system, you tend to get led down a path that may not be usable when you start presenting the end solution. And we've got a classic case of that with one of our current live projects at the moment, where we've built based on what we were given by the project team. We're now doing the workshops with the teams that are going to use it. And without exception, every one of these workshops has come away with a list of things we didn't know about. And you say, well, why have we only just met these people 3 months in?
So I think one big lesson that I will take from this conversation here is that to engage the actual user of the product much ahead of time, instead of engaging with them later on while we are going to deploy the project. So while you are building or modifying or customizing the system to fit the needs of the business, we need to engage with the actual user at that point in time.
I think it's also beneficial to actually go and see their site, because quite a lot of what they're telling you is not what you're seeing when you're there. So it's the things they do off the side of the table that they haven't told you about. And you say, what's that then? That then leads into another conversation that they didn't realize was related, but it is. When you're looking at a system, you're not just looking at one person's job. Everything's intertwined. So the efficiencies as an organization and a business come from joining those things up. So if you only look at things in isolation, you don't join that you don't see that picture. So seeing the whole picture, ideally from the office, you can see that that's not necessary if you join this over here.
True.
There's where the benefit come from as a business in terms of efficiency of implementing a new system.
So in a way, this note on the side, it's a very interesting point, because this is what I call tacit knowledge hidden inside the company, hidden inside hundreds of brains, which is not written in any SOP, which is not documented, which is not trained for. And when that person leaves the company, that knowledge is gone. and people don't know what has hit them, but the company's productivity or the outcome or the quality suddenly falls because those few people who had that tacit knowledge, who do the side calculation, which evolved over time and maybe years, actually keeps running the company in the efficient form that it is.
Yeah.
I just want to understand, how do you capture and codify it? Even if we are not doing it in the current product, but just as a student of the subject of software, how do you think we should capture that tacit knowledge and codify it for the companies to benefit from it?
I think it depends what it is. If it's something that purely occupies the space in somebody's brain, that's very difficult to extrapolate that. I think as management teams, you probably do need to recognize succession planning is quite important. And if someone is clearly the thoroughfare of pretty much every decision-making process that goes on, that does need to be broken out and backed up. I know, certainly from my own perspective, there's almost nothing that I do that a counterpart in my company can also do as well. So should I get hit with a bus, the company can carry on.
Yeah.
And whatever I had that was useful in my head is also available to somebody else in some means or forms. I think different companies probably have to take different approaches to that. But that's where the management of people probably is as important as the tools that you're trying to implement.
Yeah.
And ultimately, all of our businesses involve people, and if they're not happy, the systems won't make anything better anyway.
So when we talk about people, do you think people will become less and less important with AI coming in and tech coming in and taking a majority of the chunk of work? Or do you think they will become more important?
It's a good question. My daughter's at university at the moment, and the concept of using AI within your studies to help you decide what to do with a particular topic is new to me as an old style student that involved piles of books and reading them and trying to come up with your own answer.
Yeah.
The prospect of posing your question to ChatGPT and ChatGPT coming up with 90% of what you need to do to finish that question changes the whole. I don't know if it changes the importance, but it changes the emphasis on study and education. And interestingly, we're seeing this with a lot of AI-based coding now, that if AI generates the code, then the developer must be able to debug that code, or they're less useful than the AI. And you may find the same thing is true with people. If you lean on that AI too much to tell you the answer, you become unable to determine the difference. Or what is it telling you the right thing? So that 1% error margin you talked about, how will they know?
True.
So I think certainly in the more intelligent areas of a business or business processes, the human has to retain that ability to know the difference, or it will shortcut that decision-making process. But they have to be able to say, on this occasion, that's not quite right. And I think this is where humans generally have been very good at looking at a picture, and in the round, they can feel what is the right decision. AI sort of does that for you, but it's giving you a lot more detail. So I think this is where it's going to augment human decision-making, because what feels like the right thing to do is then going to be backed up with the AI picture of, yes, that is the right thing to do because that is there and this is shining red and there's a bright light over here. So I don't think it will augment the human decision-making process, but I think ultimately if we're going to survive as a species, we have to retain that ability to know what the difference is.
I think also, I just want to add to that, I totally agree what you are saying, that we of course have to retain that ability and we have to continually contribute. But I feel that we as human beings are able to have much better understanding of the context from multiple senses, not only information sense. If you look at AI, when we even make a context file for it, which has become very popular, context engineering, right? You can only put certain amount of information.
Yeah.
And it can only interpret it in a certain way, till certain level of depth. But the amount of context we have, for example, right, about the relationship between both the companies, the internal dynamics of each individual, the nuances, you can document all of these and you can't feed all of these to the system to give you an answer. And that is where I think human intervention in terms of giving a wider context and judging the output based on the broader context and aligning it slightly to achieve their objective would be very critical.
Yeah, definitely. I guess you also need to throw in there that human individual experience may lead the AI down a path that is not optimal. And everyone has their own experiences of what is good and bad and things that may lead them to a different way of thinking. So there's a lot of factors that can cloud the water.
Absolutely. So obviously you manage a decent size development team in the UK and in India. Tell me a little bit about how is this engineering aspect of your role changing using AI, like the hardcore development of the software, building the tools, building the technology. How is that changing using AI, and what's working for you and what's not yet have proven the value to you yet?
I think the day-to-day use of it for helping to interpret things is definitely something that is being used. Being on different continents with multiple different languages, communication is always a factor, and understanding what someone is saying is a factor. And I think the team out here and the team in the UK, they're definitely using AI tools in the background to collect the minutes from the meetings in such a way that they weren't able to do before. Phrases and things like that will be interpreted in different ways. I'm sitting in a meeting this week where our chap in London was talking about bells and whistles and the team looking blank. But you could quickly look that one up and it will tell you what that means. So the tertiary stuff around the day-to-day is definitely being used. In terms of the technology, we use an awful lot of automated tests. So automated tests would have been written by hand before or copied and pasted. The AIs are great at saying, here's one, I want it to be different in this way, run it, and it will generate the next automated test that in seconds that would have taken days. So your ability to build up banks of tests has definitely benefited from use of AI tools. In terms of new code, yes, definitely pulling through patterns, I think, but leaning back to needing to know what you want it to do, it should help you rather than drive you down a particular path.
Right.
And what we see as well as with some of the code that has used AI, if you've been around a bit, you kind of see a pattern that you've seen before there.
Okay.
And it might be in a particular library within a package that you saw 5 or 6 years ago that has been heavily used by an AI engine that is now coming out as the output, as the code, or the structure for the code you need to use.
Right.
And so, okay, well, that was a very unique piece of code at the time. Now it's become widespread. So, yeah, it's interesting. But, I think it will continue to evolve.
So what I understand is that if we divide the software engineering process in 3 parts, one is understanding and communication, the second is actual design and development, and the third being quality assurance. So extensive use already you are seeing in quality assurance. You are already seeing a lot of use in on the initial understanding and documentation of the project, and kind of breaking it down into more details, also kind of telling you what else can come here. Yeah. So kind of planning your entire production. And then during the production, what I hear from you is that the usage is limited, but of course you are seeing where it can be implemented, and over time you might actually increase that usage.
Yeah. So taking that front to back, so we quite often get a lot of pieces of information on the client side when we're implementing or starting a new project. We are starting to use ChatGPT and Gemini because it's baked into our tool set to build us a spec based on this information we've been given. And we've got some interesting results from that. It does tend to pull things together quite quickly. So that's an active project that our sort of requirements team are looking at now. So that's quite interesting. In terms of user experience, there are a number of threads that will make AI a bit more visible to them, the document import we talked about, but also a vast system with a lot of data. Quite often they just want to know something. So using natural language models to structure a query to say, just find me the last 5 quotes that involved horses. Something like that. That would involve having to go to the report section, trying to find the right query. AI is really good at that. You just point it at the data set. Natural language model, it tries to come back with the thing it thinks is the thing that the client wants to see. So lacing the results of that into something that they can then pull up on the screen is where we're looking at as well for making a bit of sizzle for the client or the user of the systems.
In recent years, I would not say years, recent 1 year, I have seen the usage of voice surpassing the typing that we used to do earlier. And at INT, we have put a thesis that the future of human-computer interaction, especially on the input side, is going to be voice. Because a lot of people who are on the field, who are in different environments, for them just to whispering into a microphone or speaking into something is much easier than noting it down. So for example, in all our meetings, Taking minutes of the meeting is already out because we are recording the meetings and it generates the minutes of the meeting. So that's one use case of voice. And there's a lot of use case of voice coming in. Like, for example, filling up a form.
Yeah.
I can just say a few words and it can fill up the form based on. So how do you see that evolving? Do you see that evolving more in, I mean, again, two questions here. One, in your own business. Two is in general. Are you seeing more usage of voice at a personal level?
Meeting minutes, absolutely. I think phone systems, you're definitely seeing a lot more voice. It's as an interface to the system. I think it's an option for a lot of operating systems to just switch on, and it should be something we can plug in. It's an interesting concept. It reminds me of a Star Trek film where the Star Trek crew go back in time to our time, and Scotty's shouting at the mouse to get it to, shouting at the computer to do something, because that's the natural way that you would do something in the future. So you're probably spot on with that's the way it's going. How long it will take to get there, I don't know.
So one thing I have also observed in in my career is that most of the Western world, including the UK, I call it a or economy. This means people make choices. They say, okay, I would do A or B or C. They are very focused. They say, I just want to do B because B is the best thing to do right now. In India, it's an and economy. I will do A and I will also do B and I will also do C. Okay. How do you see? Do you see AI changing this whole system in the Western world? Because the current thinking process is I have only limited time. I want to be extremely focused to use my time in the best possible way and to get the maximum ROI. So more of like a Pareto principle. Whereas in India, people want to spread their net as wide as they can in general and try to say, okay, I don't want to miss that particular opportunity. They are more looking at opportunity. And I think it's more about how the culture has evolved in last few hundred years, depending upon what cultural transformation has happened in these geographies, right? So do you see AI changing this fundamentally?
At a low level, yes. So a good example of where we've been trying to do something in that area. A lot of users of our systems, they're generating quotes. The quotes are going to brokers. Brokers tend to have behaviors and patterns that from previous experience, you can probably hazard a guess as to whether you're going to convert that quote or not. So converting is one thing. The value of it is another thing. So we've been looking at using AI to try and come up with a magic number to apply to every quote, and then you can order the quotes by the magic number, and that will tell you the things that are worth following up.
Okay.
So it's taking a variety of factors that intuitively as a human, you would think, if they tend to respond quickly, that's good. If they've converted a lot before, that's good. If the value of it is high, that is also good. But there's other factors as well, like is it a dangerous topic? Do we actually want this? So you can bundle all that together. The AI can look at your previous patterns of behavior and just say, well, it's obviously these 10, isn't it? So if we can unearth those at the top of the queue as the magic number quotes, that then, it prioritizes their work, so that focus on this one is what they do next, at which point it goes back into the queue, and the next top one is the next item of focus. So that's where we're looking at trying to direct AI to make that decision-making process a little bit easier, so one or the other is always the top of the queue.
So when I was in ITC Las Vegas, which is one of the largest insurance event in the world, I saw almost every second booth talking about underwriting powered by AI. How much value does it really create? Or is it just a hype as of now?
I think it goes back to the same analogy as coding, in that to have value as an underwriter, you have to know that what it's come up with is generally correct, because getting it wrong will incur claims of a size that will put you out of business. So I think it's one of these things that if it's something being underwritten that has a large amount of historical data that's quite predictable, it's very good at coming up with an answer that's probably better than what you'd come up with on paper. With our market, because we could be insuring anything from cargo ships to axe throwing events, the niche knowledge to know how to underwrite that relies on someone that's got quite a bit of experience of that and knowing what threads they can pull to try and tune the quote. So it's inevitably going to help with that. I think where it definitely will add value is threats that may occur to your risk. So like earthquake threats in Western America. if you're insuring properties in Western America, trying to get an idea of what the likelihood of a fire or earthquake threat this year in that particular area is where AI is going to be very good at looking at historical data. And probably treading on the toes of quite a lot of established risk and threat providers that are providing that information through an API based on their own historical data. Because if AI can come up with something similar based on publicly available data, then those historic data providing companies are probably going to be challenged by that. We'll have to show that the data they're providing is better than the AI can provide.
So basically, if there is a quality of data available, and if you have that tacit knowledge that we discussed some time back, especially when you are doing specialized insurance, if those things are available, then AI-driven underwriting may still make sense. But if your data quality is not good enough, and if you're not able to capture tacit knowledge of like what all actually are useful ways to look at that particular policy, especially when you are writing a specific policy, and in that case, if you don't have that tacit knowledge, then just using AI for underwriting can actually be maybe counterproductive as well.
Yeah, I think where AI could actually play a big part is with the sort of higher volume, lower value policy.
Yes.
Because quite often you can almost present a price that allows you to keep your loss ratios in balance. So provided loss ratios are low, you could offer a lower price.
Yeah.
So regardless of what the risk is, because you're trying to balance the book at the end of the year and get as many policies through the system as you possibly can. It's almost a bit like online trading. Whether to sell or to buy is determined by parameters of a whole rather than the individual risk that's being presented to you. And because those risks are relatively low, you can take a bit of a gamble on the price to get the policies in, provided the overall book is presenting itself in a profitable way. So I think definitely AI will play a part with that. The more specialized stuff, it's difficult to, some of the, we're looking at environmental risk at the moment for large petrochemical plants. One of our clients does that. They do 300 or 400 policies a year. They're very high value policies, but the data between them is so different and dispersed that AI is not going to be able to really discern a price from a data set that small and so diverse.
Got you. So there are a lot of what I saw micro insurance that happens, and again insurance which is dynamically priced, that happens a lot in the Western world, which has also been adapted in India recently. Again, a lot of them can be driven by AI. But obviously, AI can only give you better mathematics. But the fundamental principle of that business model, is that working? So for example, we saw per mile insurance, like the insurance price depending on the per mile that you drive the car. Are those kind of companies generating good profits, or are they struggling because as a business model?
I think insurance, whether it makes profits or not, determines it's largely dependent on what they've excluded. That's never more true of car insurance. So in the UK, most car insurance comes with damage to the passengers as well as damage to the car and damage to what they've hit.
Right.
It's that additional liability that is way off the scale compared to the damage to the car. So I think if you can limit things to something that is relatively small risk or cost risk, then definitely using an AI to give you reasonable accuracy is with your pricing is achievable.
Got you. So I think the underlying point that you are making is that if we are trying to take low risk bets and huge in numbers, AI can be a great mechanism.
Absolutely.
But if you are talking about high risk bets, even low in numbers, possibly AI is not the best tool. Maybe it can assist you, but it should not be relied upon in automating the whole process.
Yeah. So again, going back to that, humans are good at making a decision based on the whole. If the AI has presented that information to them to give them that view of the whole in a fraction of the time that they would have taken to pull those things together themselves, they can clearly make a decision a lot more quickly. And I think that's where you're going to get the benefits from using it.
So I think the point is that how homogeneous is the overall environmental understanding or the context understanding? Because if the context changes from one transaction to the other transaction, then the effort of just setting the context for that AI engine is so expensive and so painstaking that it may not be useful for us to do that. So if that context is homogeneous, you can keep doing a lot of things.
Yes, and I think the transactional nature of AI means it does lose a bit of the context with the individuals. So with the type of these big risks, the underwriter tends to speak to the client. They get a view from the client as to what is their attitude to risk. They say they're doing all these things in terms of safety and procedures, but are they actually? And you can look someone in the eye and determine whether or not they're telling the truth around those sort of things. So the AI will give you a picture, but the underwriter ultimately has to speak to a real person to understand whether that risk is worth writing when the risk of getting it wrong is so large.
So now coming out of AI, I think let me go back to the basics. So when you look at a client who's currently using an Excel-based system, what helps you determine that Excel is good for him? He does not need to invest money for a much larger system, because I believe that Excel is a competitor to every software. So let him stay with Excel, or let us move him to our software. How do you take that decision if you are meeting a client?
Yeah, as you say, Excel has been like the backbone of pretty much every business for the last 20, 25 years, if not longer. Underwriters love a spreadsheet. Probably the first app that gets started up automatically is the spreadsheet. I think with spreadsheets, if they're doing something that is like clone my spreadsheet over here for another risk and then change something, clone my spreadsheet, that's at the point when you think that needs to be systemized, because that's a unique thing you're doing for every different thing that you're picking up. So what you have there is not a system, it's just a series of spreadsheets. If it's a spreadsheet that they're continually touching and changing, maybe they can keep doing that. But I think where you have to take that spreadsheet away really is when it's got to be used by a wider audience. And you need some traceability around it. I know you've got history in Excel, but sometimes you need a bit of validation around who can change things, who can see things, where that is going to be used. It's difficult to do that and extend it beyond the spreadsheet.
Oh, I totally get it. So one is, of course, if you have more than one user who has to use that particular piece of information. And second is if the structure of that information or the structure of that calculation is changing or staying the same. I think these are the two big points you look at when you are suggesting either they should stay in the spreadsheet or they move to a application.
Yeah, and it goes back to looking at the user perspective, but also looking at the overall, what is the business trying to achieve? This user's perspective is his spreadsheet. Doesn't want us to take that away, but actually the business will benefit much more greatly if we can integrate parts of that spreadsheet into the system, so these guys over here know exactly what to do once something is triggered at this part of what would have been on the spreadsheet and sent around. So you see the system as a whole rather than just the user's perspective on that spreadsheet.
Yeah. So I will add that as a third point, is that if the system is as a whole, if the system as a whole is more valuable than that particular activity, then of course you need to systemize that and put it into a IT system, a proper software.
Yeah.
Now, one question gets asked. A lot of times people don't ask it, especially in larger companies. They hesitate to ask it, but smaller companies ask it very openly, that how do I know if I will get an ROI by implementing this technology? Right? So, for example, if I'm saying, okay, let's create a system to record all your meetings and give you insights on your desk by the end of the day. The next thing that comes out is that, okay, what will be the ROI? If I get the ROI, I'm ready to invest more and more into it. For a lot of systems, ROI is clear. Maybe you can reduce people or you can do more transactions for the same cost. Those ROIs are simple to calculate and you can show. But in many places, it's very difficult to show the ROI. It's not going to increase their sales overnight, nor it's going to reduce their cost overnight. So for example, let's take an example of a small insurance broking firm who may have 2 employees or 3 employees, right? They're not going to remove any of these 3 employees, number one. Number two is that their sales is not going to change because the software is not changing the sales. So the turnover is not going to increase overnight. How do you establish ROI for the technology implementation for such company?
Using traditional methods, you can sort of do a bit of time and motion studies on how this will improve time or the use of their clients. If you've got a fixed head count, they can do more if the system is doing more for them. We often find you can derive some return on investment benefits at the end of the month, because what would typically take someone away from their day job to do the end of the month thing is already taken care of. So in our specific instance,
so efficiency. I think efficiency is, maybe it's not saving much money, but it's making your company much more efficient.
It is. It's more resilient, easier to onboard staff. I think what we're starting to see now is companies asking for a return on investment, not just in the short term, but in the longer term. So how do I know that if I invest in your platform now, in 5 years' time, it's not going to be obsolete? How do I know you're going to keep up with other trends in the market?
And it also makes the company scalable, because today you can only do certain things with 3 people. But the moment you add 10 people, there can be a chaos. But if you have an IT system, you can avoid that chaos. And this 10 people can actually do 30 people's worth of work.
Yeah.
When you have put the IT system. So I think calculating IT investments ROI in short term can be a little, I would say, a short term thinking. But I think here you need to apply a little bit long term thinking if you want to be more competitive, more efficient.
Yeah, I think it boils down to the relationship you have with the client as well. If they feel comfortable that you're going to continue to evolve your offering over 5 or 6 or 7 years, and you're going to drive it in such a way that benefits them as a customer, not just you as a company, they get a little bit more comfortable with that decision. And obviously, if you're thinking more in terms of longer term contracts, you can structure that license fee so it's a little bit easier on them for the first couple of years, if you know what I mean.
How do you see the organizations of future? Like, how do you see the operationally more efficient organizations in future evolving with the current state of things that you see today? Because as people say that, AI is going to change everything. And I'm not just talking about AI. I'm sure there's a lot of other underlying things. So AI is just the technology layer.
Yeah.
There will be hundreds of applications that will come. By your imagination, how do you see organizations evolving in next 5 years?
It's an interesting question. And I'd say the biggest driver of change over the last 15 or 20 years I've seen in industry is through COVID. So up until COVID, you had IT departments that still operated a sort of walled garden approach to the company and the way they structured their IT systems. Everything's better in-house than out in the wild where we can't control it. Overnight, COVID took their workforce away and they either went bust or they had to accept that there are online platforms that will make your employees just as efficient working from home. You may want them in the office, but necessity means you have to open those doors and you have to change your mindset. And almost overnight, you saw large companies grind to a halt because their workforce was unable to access their systems, or the remote systems they put in place would cater for 5 or 10 clients, but not 500. As an organisation, we've always been quite fleet of foot and everything online as a SaaS platform. So pretty much all of our clients just carried on as normal. They didn't go to the office to access the system, but they carried on as normal from home. And I think that's where businesses have to think in terms of operational efficiency as being able to adapt to whatever is coming along to them. And part of that is sort of monitors and triggers, really. If your business is set up so all of the different areas of your business are providing MI that can be reacted to or monitored, and this is where AI will probably assist companies of the future if you've got the right MI there, because those warnings and triggers will help you make that right decision to guide the direction of the business in a different way. So I think in terms of operational efficiencies with businesses, the businesses with good process MI and monitoring to feed that decision and provide those early warnings will be the ones that survive.
And Roger, you have known INT for so long. If you have to suggest 2 or 3 things that INT should be doing to adapt itself in the evolving environment of technology, what would that be?
It's a tricky question. We're probably a little bit different from some of your other clients in that we have had that relationship for so long. I've seen some of our developers leave university, get married, have children, and now their children are leaving. So we have a relationship with the team that, with previous companies I've worked for, you don't have that. So that human connection is something that is quite sticky between business partners. So I definitely encourage you to carry on doing that.
Of course, yeah.
And very similarly, the guys we have become almost experts in the domain that they're developing in. We'll have clients give us a requirement and they'll spot the holes in the requirement because they've seen this so many times on multiple different client platforms.
So more domain expertise, continue to be more human and relationship centric.
Any problem is much easier to solve with someone if you get along with them rather than just faceless email, that kind of thing. So that human contact, I don't think will ever go away if you want to maintain those sort of sticky relationships.
Of course. No, thank you so much. So Roger, I would just like to kind of flip the script. Is there anything that you would like to ask me and I can answer for you? If there is any question thought in your mind?
Not really.
No,
it's not a question I'd really thought about. I mean, obviously you've been doing an awful lot with AI and you know what we would do. Obviously don't feel afraid to suggest things that we should be doing that you're seeing other clients doing.
Of course. Excellent. Thank you so much. This has been really, really valuable. I think we have collected a lot of nuggets of wisdom, which will be useful not only for us, but for our viewers, our employees, our customers, our prospects. And in IT industry in general,
Yeah.
as they kind of try to figure out the balance between tech and what tech to do and what tech not to do.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest question that's going to come. And how do you kind of imbibe the human values in the whole mesh of tech?
Yeah.
And I think the last point that you touched upon is very valuable, which we will continue to do, is obviously take care of our people, make sure that it's a humanized organization always. And second is, of course, that we have deeper understanding of each business, each domain that we work in, so that we are more like advisors to them rather than just a techie who is trying to figure out some code for them.
Absolutely.
So we totally take that suggestion with a lot of responsibility. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you too.